Welcome to Spilling the Connectivi-Tea, the new podcast brought to you by Virgin Media Business Wholesale. We'll be going behind the scenes on all things connectivity. This podcast is for open, thoughtful conversations with special guests as we dive into the world of wholesale connectivity, sharing the insights, experiences, and expertise from across the industry. So I'm your host, Ben Shoesmith. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm a channel marketing executive in the fixed wholesale marketing team. I've been at VMO2 for 5 years now, starting originally in network planning and design before moving into this team just over 2 years ago now. I love my job. I get to work on an exciting mix of projects and campaigns, but of course, I'm excited to be launching the podcast today in our amazing studio. So outside of work, I'm really into my fitness. I enjoy going to the gym and running occasionally too, but I'm a huge music person. So it's very, very rare that you'll catch me not listening to music. And I love live music even more so. So I'm a big festival and concert goer. And it's a bit of a running joke how many I actually go to. And I love spending time with my friends and family as well. For me, that is the most important thing. So now you know a little bit about me and what you can expect from the podcast. Let's jump into our first episode and start spilling the connectivity. So today we are kicking off our launch episode with someone I hope you're familiar with, and we're going to get to know him not just as a leader, but as a person too. It's of course the Executive Director of Fixed Wholesale at Virgin Media O2, Diego Tedesco. We're going to be hearing from the man himself, how as a wholesale connectivity business, we operate behind the scenes, powering the networks, platforms, and the services that millions rely on every day. But what does it take to build and to lead a business that sits at the heart of the UK's connectivity? Well, there's no better person to hear from and explore all of this with than Diego himself. So Diego, welcome to the pod.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for having me on. I feel a little bit, like you've picked up that intro a fair bit. So, I feel the pressure now. I felt a bit relaxed.
No pressure.
Before I heard the intro. But no, thank you for having me on.
No, glad to have you here. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Yeah.
Good. Well, I've actually got a little present to start, a little surprise for you. So I know you're drinking a cup of tea right now. A little birdie has told me your favourite biscuits. The shortbread, is that right?
That is right, yeah.
So there you go.
Very much. Wow. Thank you.
Shortbread. So you can either, enjoy it now or enjoy it afterwards. It's a
Thank you
treat.
very much.
It's up
Thank
to you.
I might open it as we go through.
Good idea. So like I said in the intro, hopefully everyone listening is familiar with you or has met you before. But for anyone that hasn't, how would you describe yourself to someone new?
Yes, interesting question when you think, right, how do I describe myself? I think when you first meet me, people probably say quiet, reserved, he doesn't give away much. And that's because I am kind of quite shy as a person generally. But once you get to know me and once I'm familiar with someone, once I'm familiar in a group or whatever it might be, then I definitely kind of come out of my shell a lot more. I'm quite kind of all in. If I do something, I either put everything into it, or I kind of don't. I don't have the inclination to do it. It's kind of it's kind of all or nothing with me. So whether that be football, I'm a big Tottenham fan.
We know that very well.
Season ticket holder. I've been a season ticket holder for many years now. Like it must be 14 years. I've been a season ticket holder. I went to the Europa League final and I went through a ridiculous journey to get there. So that's an example of just me going all in. But also other parts of my life, right? I mean, my work, my family. I like to think, if something's important to me and I'm going to do it, I'm going to really do it properly and not do things by halves. So hopefully as we go through the conversation, the passion in me comes out when I'm talking about something that that's close to my heart. So that's
definitely. I thought it's quite interesting, your first part there. It sounds like you're maybe an extroverted introvert. Would you say that's fair, or does it depend on the setting, I suppose?
A lot of people, particularly people who know me from work, are really surprised when I say that I'm shy and that I'm quite a reserved person, because my role, I'm leading a big team. I have to, if as a leader you can't really project your personality, who you are, what you stand for, then it's difficult to really lead and bring people on a journey. So I have to do that, and I'd like to think that I do that well. So people kind of are surprised when I say that. But I think it comes back to the point I made, that it's when I'm kind of first meet someone, right? It's me kind of probably just feeling my way into a conversation or relationship or whatever it might be. But yeah, I think that's probably fair.
Yeah. So off the back of that, then, what do you think is something people would be surprised to know about you that they probably don't already?
I mean, they might know this, or might have a kind of suspicion just given my name, but so my kind of early years are kind of marked by a lot of different countries that I lived in, and different kind of big moves as a family. So I was born in Spain, in Barcelona. About 12 months after I was born, my parents moved to Italy. So we were in Italy for about 6 months, I think, 6 to 9 months.
Whereabouts in Italy? Sorry.
So it was Pisa. So where the big Leaning Tower is.
Yeah.
Then we moved to Colombia, which is where my parents were originally from, when I was about 18 months old. And so my parents were kind of, when they were young, they enjoyed just traveling, and they didn't really have a kind of set home or set base. They used to go and kind of they used to find these stones from the local beaches in Barcelona, and my dad's really kind of into his art and craft, and he basically would make jewelry out of it. And they'd go to the market every weekend, and I'd be there in the pushchair. They tell me the stories, and that's how they would get by, is kind of, you know, collecting that, making arts and crafts jewelry, selling it in the market, and then they just go from place to place and just travel and see the world. And then I was born and probably kind of brought an abrupt end to it. And at that point is when they decided to move to Colombia. So we were there for 3.5 years, and then moved to the UK when I was 5 years old. So my dad moved across a year before me and my mum did. So he came over, he kind of started to try and just establish a bit of a base for us before we then came over. So yeah, the first 5 years of my life I lived in 4 different countries, and but the UK has very much become my home.
Yeah, that's a lot of change at such a young age, but I suppose you're kind of so young, you're blissfully unaware really of so much change. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of it that I can't remember well, but you do remember, you remember certain bits. I certainly, one of the really prominent memories I've got is that first day at school, when you're kind of in the classroom, you don't speak a word of English, and you're kind of, you know, it's a really surreal moment. And I remember that, and that was probably the strongest memory I've got in terms of the impact of change, because it's you know, it is really disconcerting being in a room where you don't understand anything anything else understands, and you're the only person who doesn't. And actually it was my first day at that school when one of the girls in the classroom just came up to me. She was Spanish, and she said, don't worry, I'll make sure you're all right. And it's kind of little things like that you just remember that. It's weird kind of those gestures, how they might be small gestures to the individual, or to you know, at the time even to you, but you then realize over time how kind of big a gesture it was. So
well, and those feelings never leave, clearly, like you always remember, especially when it's your first time feeling like that, isn't it? It's important. So
and I think, look, when I think about leadership, and it's actually things like that stick with me, and you kind of think, as you know, it's not just as a leader, right? It's as a, you know, how you live your life, is those really positive gestures or good gestures. They go a massive way. And you know, I'm in the privileged position to, you know, be in a fantastic role, but I'm very aware that actually those gestures, when I do that with whoever it might be, it does, you know, have hopefully a positive impact. So that's something that I'll try to kind of keep with me and hold with me as I just go through life.
Yeah, of course. And like, I know now your family is obviously very, very important to you. Your lovely wife and 3 kids. At the time, did you have any siblings? I don't know. Like you said about your mum and dad, is there?
Yeah, so I've got one younger sister. So she was born when I was 8. So I was an only child for you know, a reasonable part of my childhood. And then my sister was born. We had that kind of relationship where, you know, absolutely kind of love each other unconditionally, but we used to fight and argue a hell of a lot. I think it was the age gap. I mean, she still tells stories about me terrorizing her in one way or another, and I still think she probably exaggerates it a little bit. But yeah, we definitely had our moments and drove my mum and dad pretty mad. But then when I moved out, which is when I went to uni, we were both like so inconsolable, to be honest. So it's kind of that kind of thing where it's that sibling kind of tension and you know, argumentative nature, but deep down there's that real bond there, so.
Of course I can relate to that. Probably my mum and dad would say the same about me and my sister and our dynamic. It sounds very familiar. So later on we're going to be talking about obviously the market and our position in that market, but we're going to start off with like your personal experiences of connectivity and tech. So what was the first piece of tech that made you feel connected to the world or kind of opened up your eyes to this?
It's probably I was gonna say my first mobile phone, which I got when I was probably 14 or 15. So
what was that? What phone was that?
So it was called a Baby Ericsson, which was a Baby Ericsson because it was quite small as a handset. Like generally handsets were quite big back then. This was must have been like 97, 98. But this one was quite a small handset. It was a flip phone, so you'd kind of open it up. And,
so no brick phone.
No, but it wasn't a brick phone. Yeah, it was definitely one of the nicer, more compact handsets at the time. So yeah, Baby Ericsson was my first phone. But actually, the piece of tech that I would say was the first one that made me feel connected to the world is actually a radio, and so. Coming from Colombia, my dad and me were big kind of Colombia fans, right? Football fans. And I still remember he had like this, I don't know what it's called, is it shortwave? I think it's like shortwave radios that you can catch transmissions from thousands of miles away. If the weather's right, if the time, like, you know, certain things had to be kind of, it's almost that perfect moment to be able to get clear broadcast from like you know, many miles away. And when Colombia were playing in like World Cup qualifiers, he would be there with his radio, and it's literally trying to find you had to find it's the narrowest of kind of points where you can tap into the live broadcast for the match in Colombia. And I remember I used to sit with him while he's searching out, and then he'd find it, and we were like, come on, we can listen to the match now. We can, because you couldn't watch any international football that's happening, you know, in another continent back then. Nowadays it's easy, right? You find a stream online, but back then there was no way, and it was really hard even to keep up to date with what the score is. You couldn't just go on the internet and check the score. So actually finding that radio station and being able to listen to the match was pretty kind of surreal, in that you're listening to a live, you know, albeit radio broadcast of a match that's happening at that moment, thousands and thousands of miles away, which today seems like nothing. That's just, you know, we kind of,
at the time it
at the time it's huge.
groundbreaking.
At the time it's huge. So yeah, that's probably the first tech that I would say really made me feel connected.
Okay, so then fast forward to today. What is the app you use the most on your phone? Like, but take out the work ones. I imagine your emails are popping off constantly, and same with Teams. Outside of work, what do you use the most?
I mean, really, this is really bad, but the one that I probably use the most is like Deliveroo. It's just too convenient to, just when you're short of time and you just need kind of, you know, something easy. It's one of the bad things about technology. It just makes it so easy just to click a few clicks and suddenly you've got your meal arriving. But I think it's actually probably Google Maps. So my sense of direction, and my wife would absolutely agree with this. My sense of direction is absolutely awful. It's terrible. We would drive to my brother-in-law's house, who lives, by the way, about less than 10-minute drive away. And for the first 10, 15 times, I would put sat nav on because I wouldn't be able to find my way. That's how bad my sense of direction is.
Have you got it nailed now? Do you know where you're going?
I know it. There I do now. Yeah, I think I've just about got it. But I still, I just put on sat nav like for wherever I'm going, which is probably part of the reason why I'm so bad with directions, because I've become so reliant on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say Google Maps is definitely the one that I use the most.
Yeah. I mean, it's so convenient. I use it all the time. If I'm doing like the same journey to the office or something, it just gives you the quickest route, doesn't it? So I know where I'm going, but it's just the sense of I could be getting there quicker or avoiding traffic and stuff.
Exactly.
It's so much easier. And I was thinking about my answer to this. So to sound very like Gen Z, probably as TikTok. And I actually did look on my phone this morning, it was TikTok.
Yeah.
But like you can do everything on it now. So like you can message people on it, you can send videos, you can shop on it now. Yeah. That's a bit dangerous at times.
Yeah.
And obviously like the algorithm on that, I find it's like the most personable algorithm. I think I feel like it listens. It probably does. Everything on the For You page, like it's just perfect. So I can be there like scrolling for hours at a time. So
I'll tell you what, the whole phone listening to you, I don't think it's just TikTok. Like honestly, I will have a conversation with someone and I know for a fact I have not put anything on my phone.
Yeah.
And 5-10 minutes later I've got an ad coming up, and it is it has to be listening to you. I just don't it can't be, when it's happened so many times that it can't be coincidence.
For sure. And like if you think about along those lines, like like an Alexa or a Google Home, like those home devices, they are constantly listening, aren't they? That's their job. So they're probably, that feeds into the algorithm. Certainly my Amazon reflects that as well from what I'm mentioning that I need to buy.
I mean, if you actually listen to Bezos talk about Amazon and what they are, he doesn't talk about Amazon being a retailer or about anything like that. He talks about Amazon being a data business, and the way that they've driven so much success is that they know what you want before you even know it. And it's that kind of really, really intelligent use of data to personalize at a real detailed level, to where you kind of think, this thing knows who I am. It knows me inside out, and it's mad, right?
Yeah, it's scary if you think about it. So that's what you're using the most. To flip that question then, is there a piece of tech, perhaps like an app or a gadget or something you wish hadn't been invented?
Do you know what? I think connectivity is amazing, right? And it's such a huge enabler and so transformative in our lives that it's easy to see all of the good that comes with it. At the same time, I think there's a point at which it can start to become unhealthy and negative. And I think social media is a perfect example, right? In terms of becoming too over usage of social media. Or even, how do you protect, children and from content that's inappropriate, and or people who use social media who've got bad intent. So I think technology and connectivity is one of the most amazing things we have, but we have to. Sometimes I do wish life was so much easier without social media. Put it that way. And I remember my childhood, and I don't have to deal with half the things that my kids have to deal with. I've got a 16-year-old daughter, and they live their lives not just in the real world, they live their lives in social media as well. And it's just the pressure to kind of be that perfect person. And even when I look at Instagram and you see these perfect portrayals of people's lives, and it just creates this unhealthy expectation of what life is, and what real life is like, and there's a danger that you start to measure yourself by that, and you'll never live up to that because it's not real, right? And so I'd say social media is probably the thing that for all the good and all the positive, I think life was so much easier without it. So.
I'd agree. Like I was thinking about my answer to this as well. I was thinking like it's really who's using what, like say the social media, and if they're using it for the wrong reasons, it's kind of like everything we touched on. I suppose it's just when you are exploiting the platforms or something for something they're not made to do, that's when it's a concern, isn't it? And like, I relate to what you say about the kind of younger generations, my early 20s, right? I was on that cusp of having, I say up until the end of primary school, I had no social media, no phone. But as soon as I joined then, there was a sense of everyone else is doing this. You're going to feel behind if you haven't got a phone or be on social media. But it just makes you grow up like too quickly as well. Like, not to get too deep, but it's like everyone wants to be older than their years instead of just making the most of the time that they have now.
That's exactly the point I was going to make, actually. And it all becomes probably that much more, you become so much more conscious of the threats and the dangers of it when you have kids, right? Because you kind of just see how easy it is for them to fall into traps. But I was going to say what you said, which is it just makes children want to grow up too quickly. They're just, it's almost like there's a race to be an adult, and it's like, honestly, enjoy those years when you're not an adult, because they're amazing years, right? And not that I don't enjoy my life now, but there's that phase of your life, you know, enjoy it for what it is at that moment. And I feel like this rush to grow up, I just feel like the youth of today, there's a danger that they just miss out on that, and they don't embrace it as much as they should embrace it.
I completely agree with that. In terms of your career to date, just to touch on that a little bit, you've been at Virgin since 2012, is that right? So that's 14 years this year. So could you talk to us a little bit like how you got into the world of telco and connectivity?
So I started in external audit. So I worked for KPMG, doing kind of their graduate program, doing my accountancy qualification for the first 3.5 years of my career. And then I moved into industry pretty much as soon as I qualified. External audit just wasn't really for me. It probably comes back to what I said earlier about I'm all or nothing. And so I want to go deep and properly get into something, or otherwise I'm like, why bother? And I felt with external audit, it was kind of just really scratching the surface of stuff. And you'd go into a business, you'd do the audit, you'd be there for like 3-4 weeks, and you'd see so much opportunity, and you'd see so much stuff that you think, oh, if I was here, I'd maybe try and do this differently, try and do that. But you never had the opportunity to actually do any of that. So I really wanted to move into industry as soon as I could. So I moved to Centrica. So they own British Gas. So I was in utilities for 4 years, and I was in a number of different finance roles. And then, to be honest, it was a fairly, particularly at that point in time, just a fairly static industry. It wasn't, at the cutting edge of any real big change transformation. And I kind of just it didn't really give me the excitement. And so I wanted to move to an industry where it was, faster pace, and things were changing, things were evolving. It was more, as I say, at the cutting edge of what's happening, and kind of connectivity and everything that comes with like that, entertainment, etc. That's really what attracted me to this industry, and to Virgin Media in particular. It wasn't just about connectivity, broadband, but it was also about the TV and the entertainment. So that for me, it ticked a box in terms of actually it's moving into an industry and a business that is really thinking differently and having to think differently, because the industry is evolving, it's changing. So that's what kind of attracted me to the industry. I think the other thing that attracted me though to Virgin Media at the time was the role. I was in finance at the time, and I wanted to. Commercial was where my real interest was. I really enjoyed kind of understanding how do you generate and create value in a business. So I wanted to move my career in the direction of commercial when I was at Centrica. And actually, this is one of the things that for me as a career lesson really sticks with me, and I share this a lot with people. When I asked to kind of look at opportunities in commercial when I was at Centrica, I was told I wasn't commercial enough, and the kind of feedback I got was, you're really strong within finance. We want you to stick with finance, and you know, and we think you could have a great career in just in a pure finance role. And finance was very pure finance there. It wasn't kind of commercial finance. It was very pure finance. And I made the decision, you know, to look elsewhere, because I thought that's not where I want to take my career, and I don't want to be somewhere that doesn't back me to take my career where I want to take it. And actually, if you ask me now, and I'd like to think if you ask people who work closely with me, what's one of my biggest strengths, it is commerciality, and it is, you know, being able to see where there is the value creation opportunity. And so it just kind of goes to show that if you kind of listen to feedback that maybe is holding you back from what you want to achieve, then you could easily just not pursue a path that could be really compelling, really, really fruitful for you. So it was the best move I made, because, you know, I moved into a role that was still finance, but it was much more commercial focused. And 4 years into that journey, I was able to move into a more kind of commercial centric role within Wholesale in 2016. And that was my first step into Wholesale. And yeah, that wouldn't have happened had I stayed where I was. So it's as I say, it's something I come back to when I'm mentoring, or when I'm kind of talking to anyone about career aspirations, is, you know, back yourself. And, you know, if you've got ambitions to do something, then don't take, you know, one negative point, or don't take one setback as a reason to stop pursuing that. You know, persevere and back yourself, and, you know, more often than not, you know, good things will come of it.
For sure. I think that's advice that resonates with everyone. And so when you moved into Wholesale, then you obviously moved upwards and sideways across in that time. So since 2016, could you just touch on the kind of career moves you've had since then as well?
Yeah. So I was in, you know, commercial's always been a fundamental part of the roles that I've done. So I've been, you know, from 2016 to now. So in those 10 years, I've been in Wholesale every year, for the exception of probably two years of that. That's when I moved over to the direct business for a period. But in that time, I would say all of the roles that I did had commercial in some way, shape, or form. But what I've done as I've kind of gone through that period of my career is just taken on more scope. So whether that's marketing, whether that's kind of the digital platforms and looking after that part of things, but then gradually just kind of expanding my remit as I've kind of learned, not just learned the business, but then learned some of those functional kind of parts of the business that I'd never worked in before. And for me, the way that I've done that, and for me, that's just the way that I operate. It's something that I always try and do, is I like to just step outside my comfort zone to learn and to develop and to grow. And, you know, those again who know me and who have known me for a while will probably say, he says that all the time. He says, step out of your comfort zone. I say it to the teams I work with, you know, all the time, is step out your comfort zone. And if you can look back at the last 3 months, you know, when you know, whatever the period is that you kind of do that self-reflection on your career, if in that 3-month period, when you look back, you've been out your comfort zone for a reasonable part of that time, you can bet you'll have learned a lot, and you'll have developed, and you'll have grown. If you look back on those 3 months and it's been pretty easy, it's been kind of within in your comfort zone, in your knowledge base, then you probably haven't learned that much. So it's one of those things where in the moment it's really hard, because no one likes feeling uncomfortable, right? I mean, you know, I don't think many people can say they enjoy it, but it's being okay with it, I think, and just being at ease with the fact that this is uncomfortable, but it will get easier as I do it more and more. And then you realize, and you kind of don't even realize as it's happening, but then you realize when you look back how much you've learned, and all of a sudden marketing is not this alien concept that it would have been had I not stepped out of my comfort zone in that period. So it's been kind of just gradually growing the remit of what I'm able to take on through that time, and then eventually had the opportunity in I think it was 2021, to step into leading the fixed wholesale business. That was my first stint within fixed wholesale, which was great. And yeah, that's probably, I guess, the journey of how I got there.
Yeah, and so right now we're at a pivotal moment for us as a business. It's exciting. There's a lot on the cusp. But as you said, you stepped away from wholesale for a couple of years, and you came back last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So why did you feel it was the right time to come back, and what are you excited about the most looking ahead?
Yeah, so the first thing I say is I stepped away for the very reasons I mentioned in my last answer, right?
Yeah.
It was to go and stretch myself in a different way. But I made the conscious decision to come back. And I kind of always knew I'd come back because I just love the wholesale market. It's just something that, I don't know, I love the partner kind of centricity to it. It's, you know, the way that you succeed in this market is through building really strong partnerships.
Yeah.
And, you know, and creating strategies with partners that drive win-win outcomes. And I really enjoy that aspect of wholesale. So I kind of always knew that I wanted to come back to wholesale. Why was last year the right time? You alluded to it. I think we are on the cusp of a really, really big next chapter. I mean, I think we're already in that next chapter, but I think we've got some massive, massive things that we can achieve that I think are industry impacting. I don't think it's just, successes as a business. It's successes that will stamp a mark at an industry level. We've made no secret of the fact that we want to really step into the consumer wholesale space. We think there's a great opportunity there to champion the customer and to champion wholesale partners by building and creating something that is kind of customer experience focused. You know, it's ease of transacting. It's, you know, digital first interfaces and customer journeys. You know, that everything that you can do to not just make it easy to transact with us, but also to serve the end customer, is what we are building in the consumer wholesale solution. And I say we are building because a lot of it is there.
Yeah.
And so one, I think we've got a fantastic kind of platform that we'll be able to offer. I think we've got an amazing network, XGS-PON network, that gives scalability, reliability, and brilliant services to end customers. And I think we've got a brilliant kind of team and partnership ethos. As I said, that means we're not a faceless organization. We are an organization that you can truly partner with. And we think the combination of all those things means we can really do some great things in the consumer wholesale market. And I think for a very long time, that market, whilst it's in more recent years, it's started to have a level of more kind of disruption from, you know, competitors. I don't think there's any real scaled competitor out there, and I believe we can step into that space, and I think that will be for the good of the market, for the good of wholesale partners, and for the good of end customers as well. So great things to do there. I also think on the B2B wholesale part of the business, there's some great waves of growth there for us and for the industry. XGS-PON again is something that will enable a new part of the portfolio, a product that will become very much the bread and butter, right? It serves a huge different range of use cases for business customers, and you know, so that's something that we are very focused on right now, is getting that product right and making sure that it really meets the needs of our partners and their end customers. And then the infrastructure part of the market, where we've had some brilliant success over the last 5 to 10 years in dark fiber backhaul services. And you know, the next big wave is you know, some of the hyperscaler investments, you know, the infrastructure that needs to be built out when you look forward to AI becoming more prominently used. and the data demands on networks that is going to drive the hugely exponential growth in data demand that will drive, means there is a real need for a significant amount of infrastructure to be put in place to enable that as a solid foundation. And we have got all of the kind of credentials and expertise to do that. Yeah. So, you know, that's just a few things, right? But, you know, whether you look at the consumer wholesale side or the business wholesale side, I just think we've got a massive opportunity to do some great things.
For sure. It sounds like it feels like we are well equipped to kind of keep up to date with all these new exciting things which are going to be coming. But where do you see like our position in that market? Like you've alluded to it, like we're in a good position to serve this, but how do you see our positioning in that?
I see us as the disruptor. I see us as the business that can really shake up the status quo. I think, you know, I spoke about consumer wholesale, right? I think whilst there's been a bit of disruption there, it's more been at a kind of a regional level. There's no scaled operator that has been able to truly shake up the status quo at a national level. And I think that's what we're there to do. It's and I think that benefits everyone, because the danger of any industry is it becomes complacent. And if you become complacent in an industry, one, that the customer loses, because you lose innovation, you lose investment. No one's kind of thinking, how do I make this better? How do I enhance the offering to the customer? And so I think a complacent industry is a bad industry for the customer. Yeah. And I think we can make sure that complacency absolutely doesn't happen, because we want to raise the bar on the quality, the end-to-end customer experience that we enable, and you know, and do that not on a regional level, but do that on a national level. So that's the role I think we play, is the disruptor that is going to truly shake up the status quo.
That's an exciting position to be in, for sure. Even just, like you said, you don't want to become complacent. We want to keep up. We're here to stay, and we're here to shake things up, in your own words. Also hyperscalers, that's obviously a new thing as well, so that presents an opportunity for us, but that is also going to have a big impact on digital sort of lives going forward. Do you want to touch on anything around that?
Yeah, look, I mean we spoke a little bit about it when I mentioned Amazon, right? But you know, the use of data to transform how we live our lives is something that we can't underestimate, right? I mean, we can see it already, just how much everything around us has changed, because technology is everywhere, and it's not just technology for technology's sake. It's technology that is super personalized to what we need as an individual, and what we want as an individual. But that takes a huge amount of processing power, right, to enable all of that AI technology to be able to do its thing. And so, you know, and all of the use cases that will create in the future, you know, applications for businesses, applications for consumers, you know, there's a huge amount of runway still to go. Whilst we can look at the last 5 years and say that things have changed massively, we probably can't even imagine the next 10 years. And
that's what I was going to say. Like, remember when you talked about the radio earlier, first experience, that's in quite a relatively short amount of time. You think in that time again, another like 20, 30 years, it's like crazy to think where it could be.
Absolutely. I mean, if my dad had turned to me, and as he was kind of trying to find that kind of perfect point to listen to the football, if he turned to me at that point and said, you know, in the future, you're going to have a phone that you can take wherever you want. It's not going to be kind of wired to anything. And you'll be able to, you know, just with a few taps of your screen, you'll be able to actually watch this match on video live, crystal clear picture, clearer picture than you can see on the TV today. I would have said, you're crazy. You're mad. You know, someone needs to someone needs to see him because he's going mad. But here we are, right? And so think what would that thing be that if your dad or your friend or whoever said to you now that would make you think you're crazy, it probably will happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And so for me, that is how transformational this space can be. But coming back to your question, I think fiber infrastructure and the ability to process huge amounts of data in a very rapid way is something that is very important to underpin a lot of that kind of technology and those use cases, because it's what connectivity is what makes everything, all of these technologies work, right? It can't without it. So we've got a big role to play, because not only do we have a fantastic network today, but we've got the capabilities and the knowledge to build infrastructure that enables some of those technologies. And so we've got a huge role to play in that over the next 5, 10, 15 years and beyond.
And yes, obviously we've been speaking about the market, how exciting it's going to be. Is there anything in terms of the market you don't think people are talking about enough, or we're not hearing about?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could. Do I think there are things that are blind spots for all of us? Yeah, 100%. I wish I knew what they were, because if I knew what they were, I'd probably be able to make a hell of a lot of money, right? So some of these things is just so, there'll be a very big brain somewhere in this world who's seeing the next thing that most of us haven't even dreamt up yet. But I think it's something that is spoken about loads in terms of AI and what it can do. But I do believe that we haven't even touched the surface of it. It's like, I think there is so much that it will enable in a transformative way that we probably don't comprehend right now. Because some of the things that we are looking at AI to help us to do as businesses is all hugely valuable, right? And it's in its own right is transformational. But I think that's just tapping into the one small element of what I think is something that's much bigger. So, whilst AI is spoken about a huge amount, so it's not that none of us are talking about it. I think what we're not talking about is some of the stuff that it could enable, just because we haven't quite got there yet in our maturity of understanding it and how it can be applied.
For sure. And, we've been speaking about networks. Obviously, we're building networks, we're connecting networks. But when it comes to actually making connections with people, as a leader, how do you connect with people in a business like ours?
So, I mean, one of my biggest priorities when I go into any kind of leadership role is to create the right environment and to create the right culture where I think people can thrive and people can, feel safe to take risk and be creative and be open to possibilities, right? And I think that's how you get the best out of the people that work for you is by almost providing them a platform to be able to unleash ideas and unleash kind of the thoughts that they have. And so one of the things that I am very kind of passionate about is just creating a psychologically safe environment and one where every voice is just as important as the next voice, right? It's for me, if we're trying to figure something out, it's not the loudest voice that wins, it's not the most senior voice that wins, it's actually the voice that's coming up with the best idea. And I think that as a mantra for me is very important, because I think what it does is it means regardless of how senior you are in the business, regardless of any of that, you have got just as important a say as anyone else. And I think that hopefully means that people feel you know, people feel that they can be themselves and that they can, put ideas out there and not feel scared, to be told what the hell's what you think. Like, actually, some of those crazy ideas are the best ones. So that for me is kind of one of the biggest things that I try to instill in culturally, whenever I take on a leadership role. And what I think that does is I'd like to think, right, that it makes me just more personable or more kind of relatable. So I don't feel that I don't think people will feel kind of uncomfortable about just coming and talking to me about something or raising an idea with me, and I for me, that's how I want it to be. I want it, that's the kind of environment that I want, and that's how I hopefully put myself in a position to bring the best out of people, and I think that's for the good of the business, and ultimately that's then for the good of our partners and for the good of all the customers that they serve. So
for sure,
for
sure. And like, as someone, obviously that works in the same team, it doesn't feel so hierarchical at times. It does feel like we're one team. And also, just want to touch on the diversity of people. We have a great team of people, don't we? Like, so many different backgrounds of life, and everyone, I feel like there's so much ideas and collaboration which happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And do we still have much more to do on the kind of diversity side of things? Absolutely, right. I think we've particularly as an industry, I don't think as an industry we're brilliant at it, right? But definitely, like, trying to create that belonging kind of sense of belonging for people, regardless of your background, regardless of anything, right? It's actually that's the power of diversity, is that you have so many different perspectives, right? And so many different ways of looking at things, and ideas around how you solve problems and how you create new things. And so for me, I think it's so fundamentally important, and why we were talking just before we started recording, right, about I've recently joined as a SLT sponsor, the Neurodiversity Network in the business, and for me, we've got one of the most brilliant sets of networks in the business that's really trying to promote that diversity. And I think the more that we can do, and I think I've got a really important role as a leader in the business to try and create more awareness and give these networks more of a platform. But it's about how do we champion kind of differences, because that differences are things we should celebrate. So.
Yeah, of course. And like the different networks and the topics they're covering, that's stuff you can never shy away from talking about enough. You can never do too much, in my opinion, when it comes to that sort of stuff. And just to go back to the point, as a leader, you touched on challenges you felt perhaps early in your career and stuff. Is there any challenges you feel now? And I'm asking that as someone, early in their career, at times I can feel this imposter syndrome. Wonder if you ever feel the same, or I imagine like work-life balance can be another thing for you.
Work-life balance is definitely I think it's something that all of us have to try and manage and get right. I don't think it gets any harder as you become more senior. I don't think it gets any easier either, right? I think it's something that it's not the challenge of work-life balance isn't determined by the seniority of role. It's actually just the nature of life today, right? Is we all have extremely demanding roles, demanding lives, outside of work, and so it's a juggling act for all of us. So I think work-life balance is always I don't think it will ever not be a challenge, or not be something that I have to consciously really try and manage. But I think for me, it's about really making sure that you take it as seriously as anything else, right? As a deadline or a big project that you're doing. And I recently joined the local like health club near where we live, and the reason I joined it actually was because my youngest son, Ruben, so he's 5, and he's really got into tennis. Like he's done a couple of tennis lessons, and he's found a real passion for it. And I was trying to find a tennis court the other day when it was just raining constantly, and there was absolutely nowhere. And I ended up going to this local health club and looking around, and we ended up joining up. And now I'm really trying to make a thing of, you know, just going and finding an hour, you know, at the end of the working day, or even before the working day in the morning, and taking him and just seeing the enjoyment that he gets out of it, and actually the enjoyment I get out of it, and just getting active and doing something. So but that takes discipline to do that, because you've got to make the effort to find that hour at the end of the day, which actually is harder than what it might seem. Or at the beginning of the day, it's getting up early, and you know, so I think it's taking it just as seriously as you take the other stuff. It's easy to take a really important project seriously. It maybe sometimes isn't as, it's easy to not take something like that as seriously, and actually it's just as important. So yeah, that's a challenge. But imposter syndrome, through my career, I've definitely had to battle kind of not letting that get the better of me, and making sure that I kind of keep that belief in myself, and keep that just back myself, right, in whatever I take on, because otherwise I wouldn't step out of my comfort zone, as I said before. That it's something that I think is so important, and so it's kind of in those moments where you feel that imposter syndrome, and you feel like, am I really qualified to do this? Is just having that belief, and just stepping into it, and you know, you have moments where maybe things don't go quite as well as they could have gone, but I've learned to embrace failure through my career, and I think that's probably another important lesson for me that I've learned through the years, is that failure is actually a prerequisite to learning. If you don't fail, it's because you're not taking any risks, and if you're not taking any risks, you're probably not kind of, you know, fulfilling the full potential of what could be fulfilled. So I think failure, the more you become accepting of failure, and embrace it as an opportunity to learn, and to, you know, do things differently than in the future, the easier then it becomes to accept that feeling of imposter syndrome as something that you shouldn't be fearful of.
And do you know what, I feel like it's so good everyone's more open to talking about these things now, and it's great to hear it from someone like yourself. That's a really nice note to kind of start to wrap up the conversation. But before we end it, it's time for our Spill It Quick segment. So this is a quickfire question, some quickfire questions. I'm just looking for the first answer that comes to mind. Nothing overly thought out or whatever. You ready?
I'm ready. I'm worried now.
First one. What is the industry myth you'd like to stir up or set straight?
I think the myth I think we need to set straight is, I hear a lot about connectivity becoming a commodity. And I think that is a symptom of an industry that is allowing itself to become complacent. And I think we're determined that it's not a commodity, because we think there's a real differentiation that can be created if you do it right. So that's probably the myth, is to dispel, is that connectivity is a commodity. Sorry, that's not quick fire, but I just...
No, all good. I feel like the next one we've kind of touched on throughout the conversation, but what is the next big brew in connectivity? So the next trends you think we should be looking for?
I think personalization at that kind of individual customer level is probably a really big thing. So it links a little bit to my previous answer, but I think how businesses can really differentiate is through a real personalization of whatever they're offering to their customer. Because, you know, something that is super important to one customer isn't necessarily as important to another,
Sure.
and it's something completely different that might be the most important thing to them. And the more we find ways to use technology and use all of these things at our disposal to create that personalization, the better it is for the customer. And I think that's a trend that we'll see.
And I think that the demand for the personalization is only going to get more and more and more, as we've seen. And I'm sure you've seen in your last 14 years here. It's only going to keep going that way. And the last one, again, I feel like maybe we've touched on this throughout the conversation. Every career has its ups and its downs. Obviously, perhaps you could call it a bitter brew. What's one challenge you faced which has shaped your approach today?
This isn't a quick fire answer, this one. Is that all right?
That's that right? Fine, go on.
So this is this one's I mean, one of the lowest points of my career, and I've got to make sure I don't get emotional here, because this is a story that always kind of gets me a little bit emotional. But look, the lowest point in my career was actually when I was in a role. It was a role where I worked very closely with someone extremely senior in the organization. By the way, it's no one in the organization right now in Virgin Media O2. But you know, for whatever reason, things the chemistry wasn't. It didn't work, right? For whatever reason. But anyway, I had to prepare every week. I prepared the kind of exec update that this individual would present to their boss, and that was kind of part of my job. And there was one week where they were on annual leave, and I put it together, and it was with the person that they'd left in charge that I did the review and got it signed off, etc. And anyway, they came in on the Monday morning. They got the pack. They went straight into the session with their boss, and I thought nothing of it. And then as part of my job back then, I also I was in the exec committee meetings every week, and the following Monday I was sat in the exec committee meeting with most of the EC sat around the table, and the individual came in and came up to me and just said, I want you to leave the room, and said it in a way that was loud enough that everyone in that room heard, right? And I had to get up and walk out the room. Isn't it? It was a pretty I mean, you talk about walk of shame. That was a pretty pretty tough kind of moment. And this was an extremely senior person in the business, and at that point, it was, as I say, it's the lowest point in my career, but I felt there is no way back for me in this business. It was kind of, I have to leave this business. There's no way that I can make a success of my career here after just what's just happened. And one of the leaders in that room, who I'd worked with a little bit over the years, well, more than a little bit actually. I had worked with them a fair bit, albeit I never reported to them or anything like that. But it was a couple of days later. I was in a meeting with them. There was a few people in the meeting, and he stood up, and as he was leaving the room at the end of that meeting, he said, "Diego, give me a call." And I called him, and he said, "Look, I saw what happened. Should never have happened. Like, we think you can drive a hell of a lot of value in our part of the business, which is Virgin Media Business at the time, and we've got some roles in commercial. We think you should put yourself forward for one of those roles in commercial." That was the catalyst for me actually leaving finance and moving into commercial. So remember I said earlier, that was my thing. Is I wanted to step into commercial, was my ambition. And it was the lowest point in my career that actually was the catalyst for that happening. But also, I talked about gestures. That as a leader, that for me was one of the strongest gestures that a leader could have done at that point in time. And for me, that's something that I learned a huge amount from, in terms of, don't let failures hold you back, but also the power of good leadership. So yeah, it's
I think that's a well. Do you know what? That's a nice tone to leave it off in a way on that last message there. But it's obviously not nice to hear that you had to go through that. But like you said, you can kind of look back now and see that it's made you where you are today, hasn't it?
I'm glad it happened. I'm glad it happened. Right.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Exactly. Well, that is a wrap for today's episode. So big thanks for joining us. I've really enjoyed this conversation, so thanks for being here. If you've enjoyed the conversation, make sure you follow and subscribe so you don't miss out on what's to come. You can catch us on your favorite podcast platforms, whether it be Spotify, Apple, Amazon, but be sure to check us out on YouTube so you can see our lovely studio. So we're going to be back soon, serving up more stories, more insights, and the connectivity that you won't find anywhere else.